Maya never meant to look through Ethan's phone. She was only reaching for the charger on his nightstand when the screen lit up. A notification banner slid across, wedding venue confirmation. Her hand froze. Her chest tightened as if the air had been stolen from the room. She tapped the screen before her brain could stop her. A thread of emails opened, bright and bold. Her eyes raced across the words. Deposit secured, guest list draft, rehearsal dinner menu. And then, in black and white, the words that knocked the breath from her lungs, bride, Sabrina Miller. The world tilted. Maya's heart hammered so loudly she thought it would wake him. Ethan was asleep just a few feet away, his face calm, lips slightly parted, as if nothing in the world was wrong. But on his phone, her whole life was unraveling. She scrolled, desperate to find a mistake, a logical explanation. Maybe it was for a client. Maybe it was a surprise vow renewal. Maybe, her fingers trembled, maybe it was a cruel joke. But the details were too clear, too intimate. A ballroom reservation, a diamond jeweler's invoice, a florist appointment, all in Ethan's name. And beside him, always the name Sabrina. Her stomach knotted. 7 years of marriage replayed in flashes. The day she said yes to him, the long shifts at the hospital where she carried their bills alone, the countless nights waiting up for him when he was working late. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every piece of herself she gave. Had it all been for this? For him to plan a wedding that didn't even include her? The phone slipped in her hand. She nearly dropped it on the floor, which would have woken him. She pressed it tight against her chest, trembling, tears blurring her vision. How could he lie so easily, so deeply? She thought of the way he kissed her goodbye that morning, the casual "love you, see you tonight" he tossed over his shoulder. Her throat burned with the urge to shake him awake, to scream, to demand an answer. But something inside her whispered caution. If she confronted him now, with nothing but screenshots and her own shaking voice, he would twist it, deny it, make her doubt what she saw. He had been doing that more and more lately, brushing off her worries, telling her she imagined things. Maya placed the phone back where it had been, careful, slow, as if it were a ticking bomb. She lay down beside him, her body stiff, her mind in chaos. The man breathing evenly next to her was not the man she thought she knew. She stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, a question burning hotter with every second. Should she turn to him now, tear away the mask and demand the truth? Or should she stay silent, collect more proof, and uncover just how deep his betrayal ran? Maya Thompson had always been the kind of woman people described as steady, dependable, the one you could lean on when the world felt too heavy. In her early 30s, she had already seen more than her share of exhaustion and heartbreak through her work as a nurse. Long hours, night shifts, patients who came and went, sometimes with a smile of recovery, sometimes with silence that lingered in her heart. Yet through it all, she believed that coming home to Ethan made it worthwhile. Ethan Thompson was everything Maya wasn't. Outgoing, confident, and quick with a smile that charmed everyone in the room. He worked in business, always talking about deals and clients, about opportunities that seemed to pull him in 10 different directions. When they first met, his energy had felt like sunlight compared to her quiet steadiness. He made her laugh, lifted her out of her routine, and promised her a life that would be safe and full of love. For 7 years, she held on to that promise, even when the cracks began to show. At first, the cracks were small, little things she brushed off. A missed dinner here, a forgotten anniversary there. He was busy, he said. He wanted to make sure they had a good future, he said. She told herself it was temporary, that once things settled at work, they'd have the time and closeness they used to share. But time passed, and the excuses grew. Ethan came home later and later, sometimes smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his. When she asked, he laughed, told her she was being dramatic. "You're overthinking," he'd say, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead before disappearing into his office. There was a tone in his voice now that cut deeper than any absence. Dismissive, impatient, as though her words were interruptions rather than conversation. Maya had tried to bridge the gap, surprising him with dinner, asking about his day, reminding him of the little traditions they used to share. Most of the time, he barely looked up from his phone. She felt invisible in her own marriage, her love turning into background noise against the constant hum of his world. The only person she could still pour her heart out to was Leah, her best friend since nursing school. Leah was the opposite of Ethan, blunt, protective, the kind of friend who would drop everything to show up at Maya's door with takeout and wine. More than once, Leah warned her that something was off. "He's pulling away," Leah would say. "You can't keep pretending you don't see it." Maya would defend him, insisting he was just stressed, that he still loved her. But deep down, the doubt had already started to grow roots. Maya often thought about the choices she had made for their marriage. There was the job offer in another state, the one with better pay and a leadership role she had dreamed about. She turned it down because Ethan insisted his work tied them. There were the nights she stayed awake balancing their bills alone, making sure the house ran smoothly so he could focus on his career. She gave up chances for herself to build stability for them, believing they were a team, that his success was theirs. But slowly, she realized the sacrifices were one-sided. Still, she stayed, because she remembered the Ethan who once drove through the night to see her when they were dating. The Ethan who brought her soup when she worked through the flu, who promised on their wedding day that she would never face the world alone. She clung to those memories like life rafts, convincing herself that man was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the late nights and cold silences. Her entire sense of self had become tangled in the role of being his wife. She wasn't just Maya anymore. She was Maya and Ethan. Everything she worked for, everything she endured, was tied to keeping that marriage whole. To imagine it broken felt like losing not just him, but herself. And that was why the betrayal she had uncovered on his phone cut so deeply. It wasn't just the loss of a husband. It was the loss of the life she thought she had built, the future she believed in, the identity she had shaped around him. In Leah's kitchen one quiet evening, Maya confessed what she had seen. Her voice shook as she described the wedding plan, the name Sabrina Miller printed like a wound across the screen. Leah reached for her hand, eyes flashing with anger. "You've given him everything," Leah whispered. "Don't let him take you down too." But Maya didn't know how to separate herself from the man she had built her life around. She felt trapped between the woman she was before him and the woman she had become with him. And in that space, she was terrified of who she would be without him. That fear was heavier than anything she had ever carried, and it made every beat of betrayal sharper, every lie cut deeper. And now, with the truth pressing against her ribs, she knew the life she built could collapse in an instant. The question wasn't whether Ethan had betrayed her. It was whether she could survive losing him and still find herself on the other side. The night after finding the emails, Maya couldn't sleep. Her body lay beside Ethan, but her mind was wide awake, buzzing with questions she was too afraid to answer. When his alarm rang at dawn, he rose without looking at her, dressed in his crisp suit, and kissed the top of her head like he always did. To anyone watching, it would have looked like a husband leaving for work. To Maya, it felt like a stranger pressing a farewell she couldn't name. As soon as the door closed, she pulled his phone from the nightstand again. Her hands shook so badly she could barely type in the password, but she managed. This time she dug deeper, past the emails she had already seen, into his text messages. Her stomach dropped as she opened a thread with Sabrina. The screen filled with hearts, late-night messages, stolen plans. "Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. You'll look beautiful in white, baby. Our forever is so close." Maya's breath came in sharp gasps. Every word was a knife. He had never spoken to her like that in years. She scrolled faster, as if punishing herself with each line. A picture came up, an image of Sabrina. Younger, polished, dressed in designer clothes. The kind of woman who smiled easily, who hadn't yet been worn down by years of sacrifice. Ethan had written underneath, "My future Mrs. Thompson." The room tilted. Maya pressed her hand to her mouth to stop herself from crying out. She stumbled into the bathroom, phone clutched tight, and locked the door. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirror, pale and hollow-eyed, and she hardly recognized herself. Trying to steady her shaking hands, she searched through his photos. That's when she found it, an image of a diamond ring, glittering in its box. She opened his emails again and spotted a receipt hidden in his folders. Payment to a jeweler for an engagement ring, nearly $10,000. And then another message, a deposit receipt for a ballroom at a luxury hotel downtown. Date confirmed, venue secured. It was no mistake, no misunderstanding. Ethan wasn't planning a surprise for her. He was planning a wedding with another woman. Maya sank to the bathroom floor, the phone heavy in her lap. She remembered all the nights she sat by the window, waiting for him, telling herself he was working hard for their future. All the time she forgave his distance, his coldness, his lies. Every sacrifice she had made to stand beside him, and he had been building a new life without her the entire time. The betrayal wasn't just sharp, it was total. It tore through her chest, leaving her breathless. She couldn't stop the tears now. They rolled down her face silently as she rocked back and forth, clutching her knees like a child, trying to keep from falling apart. But beneath the heartbreak, something else flickered. Fear. What would happen if she confronted him now? He would deny it, call her crazy, gaslight her the way he had so many times before. She would end up questioning herself, and he would slip further into the arms of another woman. But if she stayed quiet, if she gathered proof, maybe she could protect herself. Maybe she could take back even a shred of control from the wreckage of her life. She wiped her face, stood, and tucked the phone back where she found it. Her reflection in the mirror looked broken, but inside, a decision was forming. She couldn't let him destroy her without a fight. That evening, Ethan came home cheerful, humming as he loosened his tie. He poured himself a drink, kissed her cheek, and sat down at the table as though nothing was wrong. Maya watched him carefully, memorizing every move, every lie hidden in his casual charm. After dinner, he leaned back in his chair, swirling the last sip of whiskey in his glass. "I'll be out of town for a few days," he said easily. "Business trip. Don't wait up." Maya forced her lips into a smile, nodding as though she believed him. But under the table, her hand clenched tightly around her phone, the screenshots safe inside. Proof of every word, every receipt, every betrayal. He had no idea she already knew the truth. And as his smile lingered, her heart shattered in silence. The days that followed were like walking on a glass floor, every step threatening to break. Maya pretended to live her normal life, but inside, every glance, every word from Ethan carried a new weight. She tested him gently at first, asking questions she already knew the answers to. "So, this business trip," she said one morning while pouring his coffee. "Where exactly are you going again?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Chicago. Meetings with a client." Her hands shook as she set the mug in front of him. She had already seen the Ballroom Deposit, downtown Chicago, on the same dates. Her heart clenched, but she forced a smile. "That sounds exciting." Later that week, she asked, "Do you ever think about us renewing our vows? It's been 7 years. Ethan chuckled, dismissive. "That's sentimental nonsense, Maya. We're not kids anymore. You worry too much about things that don't matter." The words stung. Once, he had been the one to talk about forever, about growing old together. Now, he made her feel foolish for even wanting it. As the lies piled higher, so did his cruelty. He became sharper in his tone, more impatient. If she asked when he'd be home, he snapped that she was controlling. If she wondered about his late nights, he accused her of nagging. He twisted every concern into her flaw, her failing. "You're paranoid, Maya," he said one night, slamming his briefcase on the counter. "Always imagining things, always looking for drama. Do you want to ruin this marriage? Because that's where you're heading." Her throat closed up. She wanted to scream that she wasn't imagining anything, that she had proof of every lie. But instead, she stayed silent, swallowing her pain like poison. The isolation grew worse. Friends who once adored her started pulling away. She noticed the shift during a dinner with one of Ethan's business partners and his wife. The woman gave her a pitying smile and said, "Ethan tells us you've been struggling. I hope you're taking care of yourself." Maya's cheeks burned. Ethan squeezed her hand under the table, smiling as though he were a supportive husband. Inside, she wanted to yank her hand away and shout the truth. But she didn't. She saw how easily he was rewriting the story, painting her as unstable, the troubled wife who made things difficult. Leah was the only one who saw through it. When Maya broke down in her friend's living room, Leah's eyes flashed with fury. "He's setting you up, Maya. He wants people to think you're crazy, so when the truth comes out, nobody will believe you." Maya buried her face in her hand. I keep hoping maybe he'll change his mind. Maybe if I give him space, he'll realize what he's throwing away." Leah grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look up. "He's already thrown it away. You need to protect yourself. Legally, financially, before he leaves you with nothing." The word legally rang in Maya's ears long after she left Leah's house. That night, when Ethan announced he was working late again, Maya sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Finally, she typed, "Divorce lawyer near me." The next day, during her lunch break at the hospital, she met quietly with an attorney in a small office tucked between a bakery and a bank. She felt sick walking in, as though stepping into that office meant admitting her marriage was already over. But the lawyer's calm voice steadied her. "Gather everything," the woman said gently. "Bank statements, property deeds, any proof of his affair. The more evidence you have, the stronger your case." Maya nodded, clutching her bag. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "I don't know if I'm ready for divorce yet." "You don't have to be," the lawyer assured her. "But you need to be ready to protect yourself. Men like this, they don't leave kindly." Those words haunted Maya. A week later, she logged into their shared bank account, something she rarely did because Ethan always managed the finances. Her stomach twisted as she scanned the recent activity. Large withdrawals, transfers to accounts she didn't recognize. Her heart stopped when she saw a payment, $10,000, to the same luxury hotel she had already seen on his email. Another payment pending for a high-end florist. He was using their joint money, her savings, the years she had worked double shifts to keep them afloat. He was financing his wedding with Sabrina out of the life she had helped build. The rage that rose in her chest was new, sharp, almost blinding. This wasn't just betrayal of love. It was theft of her sacrifices, her sweat, her years. He was stripping her down to nothing so he could build a new life on her. That night, when Ethan returned home late again, Maya watched him quietly. He hung up his coat, loosened his tie, poured himself a drink like a man with no worries in the world. She wanted to scream, to throw the glass against the wall, to show him she knew everything. But she kept her silence. She was no longer just a broken wife holding on to scraps of love. She was a woman preparing for war, one piece of evidence at a time. And though Ethan still believed he was in control, Maya had already begun to shift the balance. He didn't know it yet, but the life he thought he had so neatly arranged. Maya stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the simple black dress she had chosen. Ethan had told her there was a business dinner that evening. Nothing fancy, just clients, but you should come. His tone had been casual, almost dismissive, but something about the way he said it made her uneasy. Still, she agreed. A part of her wanted to see for herself what he was really doing. When they arrived at the hotel ballroom, Maya's stomach twisted. The place was glowing with crystal chandeliers, soft music, and waiters carrying trays of champagne. This wasn't a business dinner. It was something else entirely. The large banner by the stage confirmed her worst fear. Congratulations, Ethan and Sabrina. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She grabbed the edge of a chair to steady herself, her heart hammering against her ribs. Around her, people clapped, laughed, and hugged each other. At the center of it all stood Ethan, his arm proudly around Sabrina, who wore a sparkling gown and a diamond ring that caught the light with every movement. Maya's vision blurred. For a moment, she thought she might faint, but then something inside her hardened. She wasn't going to collapse here, not in front of them, not in front of him. Ethan spotted her in the crowd. His smile faltered for a split second before he regained his charm. He didn't acknowledge her. He didn't call her his wife. He simply turned back to Sabrina and kissed her hand while the room cheered. The humiliation was unbearable. People were whispering, glancing at Maya with confusion. She felt their stares like daggers, as if she were some uninvited ghost haunting the celebration. Sabrina raised her hand high, showing off the ring. "Isn't it beautiful?" she beamed. "Ethan says it's the start of our forever." Maya couldn't stay silent any longer. Her voice cut through the laughter, sharp and trembling. "Funny," she said, stepping forward. "That looks exactly like the ring my husband bought, with our money." The room fell silent. Gasps echoed against the walls. Ethan stiffened, his arm tightening around Sabrina. "Maya," he hissed, his voice low but dripping with venom. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," Maya said louder, her eyes locked on him. "I'm exposing you." Whispers erupted around them. Sabrina's smile faltered, confusion flickering in her eyes. Ethan's mask slipped, his face twisting with anger. "You've always been like this," he snapped, stepping toward her. "Clinging to me, dragging me down, making me feel guilty for wanting more. You've never understood me, Maya. You've never been enough." The words hit like blows, but Maya stood tall, her voice steady even as tears stung her eye. "Not enough? I gave up my dream job for you. I worked double shifts so you could build your business. I cooked, cleaned, waited for you night after night, believing your lies. I gave you everything I had, everything, and you used it to build a life with." Gasps filled the room again. Sabrina stepped back slightly, looking at Ethan with wide eyes. "Wait," she said slowly. "What is she talking about?" "She's delusional," Ethan snapped quickly, reaching for Sabrina's hand. "She's unstable. I told you we were done years ago. She can't let go." But Maya pulled her phone from her purse, her hands steady now. "Receipts. Bank transfers. Messages. Proof of everything. You didn't just cheat, Ethan. You stole from me." The color drained from Sabrina's face. She looked at Ethan in horror. "You told me you were divorced. You told me she was out of the picture." For the first time, Ethan faltered. "Sabrina, listen." "No." Sabrina's voice cracked like a whip. She yanked her hand from his grasp, her eyes filling with tears. "You lied to me too. You made me believe." She stopped, shaking her head as if the words couldn't even form. The room buzzed with whispers, judgmental stares closing in on Ethan from every corner. His business partners exchanged looks, their smiles gone. Friends whispered behind their hands. The image he had built so carefully was crumbling in front of everyone. Maya straightened her shoulders. "You wanted to humiliate me, Ethan. You wanted me to feel small, weak, disposable. But the truth is, you've destroyed yourself." Ethan reached for her, his voice desperate now. "Maya, stop. We can." But she stepped back, shaking her head. "No. I'm done saving you. I'm done waiting for a man who only takes. You planned a wedding without me, Ethan, but you won't get to plan my downfall." Sabrina turned on him then, her voice shaking with fury. "I don't want to see you again. Ever." She tore the ring from her finger and threw it at his chest before storming out of the ballroom, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The crowd parted around Maya, some people avoiding her eyes, others nodding at her with quiet sympathy. Ethan stood frozen, alone in the center of the room, his carefully crafted world collapsing piece by piece. And for the first time in years, Maya felt something powerful rising in her chest. Not despair, not fear, but strength. He had tried to erase her, but instead, after the engagement party disaster, Ethan's world began to crumble piece by piece. The news spread quickly, whispers of his double life, the wife he had tried to erase, the lies he fed Sabrina. By the end of the week, his business partners had pulled away, claiming they couldn't trust a man who lied so easily in his personal life. Deals fell through, meetings were canceled, and suddenly the man who once strutted through life with confidence was left scrambling to hold. Sabrina never came back. She didn't answer his calls or reply to his messages. She had been humiliated in front of everyone, and Ethan was the cause. Maya sometimes wondered what Sabrina thought of her, whether she saw her as an enemy or a fellow victim. But in the end, it didn't matter. Both of them had been deceived by the same man, and both had walked away stronger for it. Maya, meanwhile, was quietly putting her life back together. The very next morning after the party, she visited the lawyer again. This time, there was no hesitation in her voice when she said, "I want to file for divorce." The words tasted strange on her tongue, but also freeing. The lawyer guided her step by step. Together, they froze the joint accounts before Ethan could drain them further. Maya gathered every document she had saved, screenshots of texts, receipts, proof of his spending on Sabrina. For years she had felt powerless, always waiting on Ethan's choices. Now, for the first time, she was the one making decisions. Leah stood by her side through it all. She celebrated each small victory, closing a joint credit card, securing her share of the savings, even changing the locks on the house. "You're taking your life back," Leah said proudly one evening, handing Maya a glass of wine. "Piece by piece. This is the Maya I've been waiting to see again." Maya smiled, though her eyes filled with tears. She had thought she would feel empty without Ethan, but instead she felt lighter, as if shedding a weight she didn't realize she had carried for years. Work became her anchor. She threw herself into nursing with a focus she hadn't felt in a long time. Colleagues noticed the change in her energy, her quiet strength. When a new leadership position opened in her department, Leah pushed her to apply. "This is your time," she urged. Maya hesitated only for a moment before submitting her application. Weeks later, she stood in her supervisor's office, holding the letter that confirmed her promotion. She had given up her dreams once for Ethan. She wouldn't do it again. Through it all, she chose not to seek revenge. She could have ruined Ethan publicly, exposed every detail of his betrayal. But she realized she didn't need to. He had destroyed himself. His lies had left him with nothing. No wife, no fiancé, no business partners who respected him. The punishment fit the crime, and she didn't have to lift a finger. Sometimes she saw him around town, shoulders slumped, a shadow of the man he once was. Once, he even tried to speak to her, to apologize in his half-hearted way. But Maya didn't stop. She simply walked past him, her head high. He no longer had the power to wound her. In the quiet moments of her new life, she learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. She decorated her apartment the way she wanted, cooked meals for herself without worrying about his preferences, and laughed freely with Leah without guilt. The sound of her own laughter surprised her at first. It had been so long since it came easily. Maya found healing not in replacing Ethan with someone else, but in rediscovering herself. She learned that love wasn't supposed to be about losing who you are, but about growing stronger together. And while she had lost Ethan, she had gained something far more precious: her independence, her dignity, and her peace. Ethan ended up exactly where his choices had led him, alone. But Maya no longer cared about where he was or what he had lost. She only cared about what she had gained. For the first time the evening sun spilled through the wide windows of Maya's new apartment, painting the walls in gold. Boxes still sat in the corner, half unpacked, but she didn't mind. For the first time in years, the space was hers, quiet, simple, and free from the weight of someone else's demand. She curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, breathing in the stillness. Her eyes drifted around the room. There was no trace of Ethan here, no reminders of the life she had left behind. Instead, there were little pieces of herself: a framed photo of her and Leah laughing in the park, a candle she had bought because she liked the scent, a stack of books she had always meant to read. Every detail felt like a small victory, proof that she was building something new, something that belonged only to her. For so long, she had believed her worth was tied to being Ethan's wife. She had lived in the shadow of his choices, waiting for him to love her the way he once did. But now, sitting in her own home, she realized she was no longer waiting. She wasn't broken. She wasn't a victim. She was a survivor who had walked through betrayal and come out stronger. The pain of his lies would always be a part of her story, but it no longer defined her. What defined her now was the strength it took to let go, to walk away from the wreckage, and to choose herself for the first time in years. Maya lifted her tea, whispering the thought that had been sitting in her chest like a quiet truth. Sometimes the deepest betrayal is not an ending, but the doorway to freedom. She smiled softly, steady and certain. "He planned a wedding without me," she said aloud, her voice clear in the empty room. "But I'm finally ready to plan a life for myself." Hey besties. Thanks so much for watching till the end. Maya found out her husband was secretly planning a wedding with another woman. She faced betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation, but instead of breaking, she rose stronger. Maya chose herself, reclaimed her life, and found freedom. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more stories. See you in the next one. Bye!